welcome to Playback, Tier 2 World's weekly showcase of our best stories from around the globe. Coming up, Russian troops are accused of war crimes in Ukraine. We have a special report from Bucha showing the shocking remains in areas abandoned by the retreating Russian army. Muslims in France worry about their future as the presidential election approaches. And as the Muslim world enters the holy month of Ramadan, we look at how people are celebrating from the Middle East, Balkans, Africa, and here in Turkiye. Western powers are promising to hold Russia accountable for the killings of civilians in Bucha and other towns around the Ukrainian capital, Kiev. The outrage comes after images emerged of mass graves, bound corpses, and destroyed homes following the withdrawal of Russian troops from the area. Ukraine and its allies say Russia is guilty of war crimes, though Moscow denies it. Tier 2 World's Ali Mustafa was on the ground inside Bucha and sent this report, a warning. Viewers may find some of these images disturbing.
Just beyond the gates of a church in the town of Bucha, 37 kilometers northwest of the capital Kiev, lies an open field, where a 14-meter-long trench has been dug. What's inside can only be described as horrendous.
To say that this is a gruesome sight would be an understatement. This is where Ukrainian officials are telling us that 60 bodies were buried in a mass grave outside that church by the Russians, and they try to cover it up. And they say that some of these bodies had their hands tied behind their backs and were executed through the head, shot through the head.
The Ukrainians say the Russians used the church grounds to hastily bury civilians and security personnel they had killed after occupying Bucha in the first days of Moscow's aggression.
By Russians, they tried to, to cover this crime, and from United States satellite, they gave the picture to the Ukrainian government, so they find the mass grave, which was pretty, fresh.
The Ukrainians say Russian forces used the grave to hide their crimes of killing innocent civilians execution style. The local priest believes the first burials were innocent civilians caught in the crossfire, but then it became more sinister.
Коли почалося вторгнення, буквально
The first burial here took place on March the 10th in agreement with the Bucha City Council because it was impossible to bury locals once the Russians occupied Bucha as access to the cemetery was blocked. And there was also no place in the morgue. Later, Russian occupiers started to bury people here they had executed.
Not far away from the mass grave, this man, Oleg, holds a vigil at his neighbor Margarita's grave. He buried the woman at this spot in the church compound after finding her dead on the street.
Margarita was 34 years old. She was fleeing Bucha with her husband and 2 children when they were hit by a Russian tank shell. Her children, boys aged 4 and 10, were burned alive. Her husband, the only survivor, had his leg torn off. He is recovering at a hospital in Kyiv.
The Ukrainian president says Russian soldiers are murderers and butchers and is calling for the international community to investigate. The Russians responded by saying the mass grave in Bucha is a publicity stunt meant to further harm Moscow's reputation. But as the bodies are identified and the cause of death revealed, the real truth will eventually come out. Ali Mustafa, TRT World, Bucha, Ukraine.
Well, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also visited Bucha. Afterward, he delivered his first address directly to the UN Security Council, calling for tougher measures against Russia.
Civilians were crushed by tanks while sitting in the middle of the road. They cut their limbs, slashed their throats. Women were raped and killed in front of their children. Their tongues were ripped out because they did not want to say what the aggressors wanted them to. So this is no different from other terrorists such as Daesh who occupy territories. And here it is, done by a member of the United Nations Security Council.
Now over in France, Emmanuel Macron is looking to secure a second term as president. He's been boosted in the polls domestically by his role in trying to solve the Ukraine crisis. But those in the country's large Muslim community are worried by new laws enacted under his administration. Francis Collings reports.
It was a bill designed, according to the government, to reinforce French egalitarian values, introduced by President Macron in 2020. To combat what he called a growing sense of separatism in some communities.
Une volonté revendiquée.
There is a desire openly stated, a methodical organization which aims to break the rules of the French Republic and to create a parallel order with other values, nurturing a different organization for society.
It was the mentions of Islam in his speech that caused the law to be seen as a criticism of the Muslim community, something the government strongly denied.
This bill is not a text against religions, nor against the Muslim religion in particular. On the contrary, it's a law of freedom. It's a law of protection.
By the time the law came to be passed, it had been reworded, with no mention of the word Islam, although that didn't stop protests against the law from taking place. The legislation allowed the government to exert more control over charities and NGOs, as well as homeschooling, and gave them the power to close places of worship if they were deemed a threat. It also gave rise to concern in the Muslim community. The laws were seen by many as legitimizing existing prejudices.
After the laws passed, we started to see a lot of people experiencing anti-Muslim and anti-Islam actions from people surrounding them. It could have been at work or in the street.
France has a Muslim population of over 5 million, the largest of any European nation. Many feel they are an easy target for politicians, blamed collectively for the violent actions of a few.
And while some see Macron's laws as being anti-Muslim in nature, others see them as being purely political, something that he needed to do in order to protect the state.
This
is mostly a law of public order, not itself a law about religion or secularism. It is a law about religion being used as a political tool. A law was needed because the number of incidents involving the political use of Islam was way too much on the rise. We will see now how it is enforced.
There's also an awareness that things could be far worse. Candidates like Eric Zemmour, a man with a history of making racist and anti-Muslim comments, are drawing large support. A wider concern is that the far right, represented by Zemmour and Marine Le Pen, could attract up to 30% of the vote in the first round of the French election. Francis Collings, TRT World, Paris.
On April 2nd, the first prayers were held to signal the start of Ramadan, called Teravih. This is a month when Muslims ask for forgiveness and abundance. And in Istanbul, after many years as a museum, the Hagia Sophia is marking its first Ramadan as a Muslim house of worship in nearly 90 years. Yasin Ekan explains.
Ramadan is a time to wind down and self-reflect. And for the first time in 88 years, worshippers mark the start of the holy month at the Hagia Sophia Mosque.
There isn't the same atmosphere. The atmosphere here is just totally different. I feel much more spiritual. I can feel Ramadan much better than what it is in Australia.
Whether it's the large crowd or Hagia Sophia's enchanting acoustics, worshippers say it's near impossible to be here and not feel that connection. The nearly 1,500-year-old structure is a religious symbol to people worldwide and attracts visitors from around the globe.
The meaning is without words. For me, I actually flew here from Australia just to experience this amazing event. It's the first time Teravih, like you said, in 88, so call it nearly 100 years. And for me, I didn't want to miss it for anything, so I literally caught a flight, I landed, I prayed my Teravih, alhamdulillah, and I'll be heading back to Australia tomorrow night.
For almost 2 years, the Hagia Sophia and mosques in Turkiye have been closed during Ramadan because of the coronavirus pandemic.
And worshippers are eager to be back in this place of worship. Throughout the month of Ramadan, there are going to be events held in this mosque in honor of this holy symbol. Yasin Eken, TRT World in Istanbul.
Ramadan celebrations are more of a struggle for worshippers in Gaza. Israel's blockade has slashed the region's economic output and made unemployment surge. But Palestinians are still determined to make the holy month shine. Nizar Sadawi introduces us to the people who make it possible.
Traditional lanterns are one of the most popular symbols of Ramadan around the Muslim world. They can also make for a good business opportunity. For most of the year, Muhammad Abu Amr is a carpenter in Gaza, but leading up to the month of fasting, he specializes in making lanterns.
There are several stages in the making of a lantern. It starts with designing the lantern, then cutting the parts and smoothing the wood, and finally assembling it. This type of lantern is made around the world using laser machines, but Israel doesn't allow these machines to enter Gaza. So we make them using the only routers available here, and they're locally manufactured, not imported.
Lanterns are seen everywhere during Ramadan. Children play with them before they're hung up. Each house has at least one.
I came to buy lanterns for my kids like I do every year. Lanterns here are annual Ramadan rituals such as dates and juices. We come to these small workshops to buy these and bring happiness to our children.
Safa Abu Ataya is unemployed, but she is able to earn money with her needles, thread and talent. She makes lanterns from brightly colored fabrics.
I call what I do an idea with a needle. My work varies according to the season, whether it is New Year's, Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha or Ramadan. At the moment, I'm focused on lanterns and making toys for famous Ramadan characters, whether from the popular Egyptian markets or cartoon characters such as Tak Tak, Boogie and Tam Tam.
Lantern makers in Gaza face competition from imported products that sell for a fraction of their prices, but they believe many people here still prefer unique and customized lanterns, even if they cost more.
Most Gazans live below the poverty line, but they're also determined to celebrate life's milestones and rituals. And when it comes to Ramadan, they're willing to buy these decorations to bring magic to its holy nights and happiness to their children. Nizar Sadawi, TRT World, Gaza.
In North Macedonia, mosques are open for Ramadan night prayers for the first time in 2 years, after restrictive COVID-19 measures were lifted. Bekim Naci went to the capital Skopje to see how people in the Balkans are reacting.
This Ramadan, Muslims in North Macedonia have more reason to celebrate than one. The COVID-19 restrictions of the past 2 years are lifted, and traditions that were on hold can be practiced once again. Sofra Iftarit, or the Ramadan dinner table, began as a project to feed the poor during the holy month. But as the Ottoman Bazaar is a commercial and touristic area, anyone strolling by can also get to enjoy the local cuisine.
With the help of private donors, we're able to serve food for iftar. However, this year, there are cases where passers-by or tourists also sit at the tables and join. And when they're told about the project, they make donations for iftar that will be served the following days.
At this time of the day, just before the sunset, streets become very busy with people rushing home to break their daily fast. Some of them are visiting friends or family, where they have been invited over for dinner. A very important Ramadan tradition that was on hold for 2 years as a result of COVID-19 crisis. The Suleymans pay special attention to this tradition. Rayhan and Haris have made sure the table is well set, especially since we are their first Ramadan guests in more than 2 years.
In the last couple of years, because of the pandemic and the curfew, we couldn't invite our relatives, we couldn't visit them, and we felt an emptiness in our houses because, again, it is a tradition together to be all together for iftar.
Mosques in North Macedonia are packed again for nightly Ramadan prayer. An overnight curfew to fight the pandemic over the couple of years had kept mosques shut and people inside their homes. The Imam of Skopje's Mustafa Pasha Mosque, Abdusamed Zechiri, says the Ramadan nightly prayer achieves a unity like no other.
Arranging the rows during prayer gives us a model of how to behave outside the mosque in our actions and activities, and this we only learn from collective prayers such as the Taraweeh.
While COVID-19 in North Macedonia is on the wane, it still isn't quite done yet. But it seems to have made Muslims here in Skopje reflect on what they have and appreciate what they cannot bear to lose. Bekim Laci, TRT World, Skopje, North Macedonia.
Moving on to Africa, Muslims in Nigeria are showing their faith with acts of charity toward the poor and vulnerable. And an imam in the capital Abuja has set up a Ramadan food bank for those in need. Palum David reports.
Ramadan is a time when Muslims strengthen their relationship with God as they pray and fast. It's also a chance to reflect and give back to community. Here at the Al-Bibiya Mosque in Nigeria's capital Abuja, the sun has just set, so the day's fasting is over. And after prayers, worshippers will sit down to a nightly feast. The national chief imam at this mosque, Fuad Adeyemi, has been providing free meals for the past 15 years to anyone who comes here to break their fast. He calls it a Ramadan food bank.
The history of food bank is an history of compassion. I feel happy and I feel grateful to God that God has used me to do things without talking in this country.
Fundraising takes place throughout the year to raise the $35,000 needed to prepare the meals, and scores of volunteers help out serving the food. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization says about 14 million Nigerians are facing critical food shortages. The COVID-19 pandemic, high inflation rates and fuel scarcity have contributed to a hike in the price of food. So, for the faithful who come here throughout Ramadan to break their fast, these free meals are a lifesaver. 20-year-old Abubakar Sabiu is new to the city and says Imam Fuad's kindness is a blessing.
This is my first Ramadan here in Abuja. The way I have myself here in Al-Habibiya Islamic Center, I really appreciate the way I get a food. Before I get this place, I'm really worried, I'm bothered about how can I get myself in terms of having a food during iftar and during sahur.
This mosque served 1,700 meals on the first day of Ramadan. By the end of the month, it would have notched up around 50,000 meals, showing the sense of community here is well and truly alive. Palum David, TRT World, Abuja.
Still to come on Playback, Solidarity in Action, a Polish school welcomes dozens of Ukrainian children who fled their country. And we'll tell you how two dancers, one Ukrainian and one Russian, are teaming up in Italy to call for an end to the conflict between their two homelands. Now, while lives are lost and ruined in Ukraine, neighboring Poland has responded with empathy and compassion. The country has taken in thousands of refugees and also promised to educate Ukrainian children. Sarah Morse visited one school in Warsaw that's not just welcoming these students, but is also trying to offer them a sense of belonging.
The bell signals it's time for Polish class. A new school in a new country means these Ukrainian refugees also need to learn a new language. It's a lot to take in for the traumatised teenagers.
I'm just sitting there like with poker face and I don't have anything in me. It's really upsetting. But like When the class starts, I'm trying to focus on that and forget everything just for those 45 minutes that we're sitting and learning something. But I'm also worried that I'm not gonna go home. I really want to go home.
From the lunchroom to the classroom, the school routine is offering the refugees a semblance of normalcy.
It's like, I don't need to worry about my life, because in Ukrainian it was like a terrible chaos. I sitting at home when they bombed house near to my house, 5 minutes to my house. I just was at home, I just was nervous, I don't know what to do.
How did they find out? The head teacher says the school has enrolled 50 Ukrainian students and given jobs to 4 Ukrainian teachers.
You can see the sadness in their eyes, even if you can see a smile on their face. One day, a door slammed, and it scared one of the Ukrainian students so badly that she had a panic attack. We had to give her oxygen to calm her down.
But the Polish students here are doing their best to welcome their new classmates. On the day we visited, they put on a talent show. The theme was hope. All the activities they organise are designed to bring the Ukrainian and Polish students together, a chance to momentarily feel like normal teenagers. But offering a compassionate ear takes its toll on the Polish students too.
I remember that one girl, when I gave her the key to her locker, her hands and her whole body was shaking. That was horrible, yeah. I try not to cry and not to show them that it's really hard for me too, but I try to cheer them up. But when I'm alone, it's hard for me.
It's not just the classroom doors that have been opened to these refugees. The wider school community has rallied, providing books, backpacks, pencil cases, everything these students had to flee their country without. But of course, educating so many new faces comes at a cost for this school and for this city. Warsaw's mayor says 100,000 school-aged Ukrainians have arrived in the city. So far, 14,000 have been given places at schools.
We need additional schools, we need teachers, we need computers, we need equipment, because the numbers are really staggering. Even if we want to accept half of the kids from Ukraine who are already in Warsaw, that's 50,000.
Just like any school, when the bell tolls at the end of the day, there's an eagerness to go home. For the Ukrainian students, they won't be going to the home they yearn for. But until that day comes, they're making the best of the opportunity they have here in Poland. Sarah Morris, TRT World, Warsaw.
As Russia continues its attacks on Ukraine, ballet dancers from both sides have come together to call for peace and unity. Laura Timmers has more on the sold-out charity performance in southern Italy.
Beauty will save the world. Those are the words of Russian author Fyodor Dostoevsky from his novel The Idiot. And that's also what the world of ballet believes, as Ukrainian and Russian dancers came together in Naples to plead for peace. Like Russian ballerina Maria Yakovleva and Ukrainian ballerino Denis Cherevichko, who have been performing together for 16 years.
We are really good friends and partners. We're supporting each other all the time, and especially right now it's very important to be both of us and to support and to show to the people that love, peace, art, support and help will save this world.
All night, dancers from both countries took over the stage with grace, but stood firm in their cause to help Ukraine in its fight for freedom against Russia.
I think it's important in this situation, in this time, to be together on stage, to do little thing, the smallest thing what we can do for Ukraine. I think this is the main goal for all of us. That's why we are here, that's why we are dancing tonight.
Dancers also performed in condemnation of the atrocities in the city of Bucha, where hundreds of civilians were found dead after Ukrainian forces retook the town on the outskirts of the capital, Kiev.
I live in Bucha 5 years. It's my city. I know this city. I walk in this street. This photo, what I see, I know this place. I know what is this. It's horrible. I can't think about this. It's really It's like not in this world. It can't be true, but I know it's true, and we never forgive this.
Ballet will not find a resolution to the conflict, but for one night only, its beauty illustrates how Ukrainians and Russians can share the stage in peace. Laurie Timmers, TRT World.
Well, that rounds up your week of news here on Playback. Stay tuned to TRT World for the latest stories.